Thank you, Stockholm. Oh my gosh, it's great to be here. It's great to be here in Stockholm. It's good to be home. You know, that's what I love coming to Sweden, because whenever I'll get here the day before I walk around, people always think I'm Swedish, probably because I'm drunk. People will come up to me all the time. They'll just come up to me and talk to me. They're like, Bjorn, Bjorn, Bjorn. That's how you sound to me. And then when they realize, not only am I not Swedish, but I'm American, the anger. The anger. The American. Been all around Scandinavia. I haven't been to Lapland yet. Any Laplanders? Yeah, there you go. Maybe I'm a pervert, but am I the only one that thinks that Lapland sounds like a strip club? Every bachelor party ends up in Lapland, you know what I'm talking about? Believe me, we're gonna go there someday. Lapland. Special kind of lap dance up there in Lapland. You're gonna love it. I got in yesterday. I had Swedish meatballs. Took me a while to find the IKEA, but I did. I think that's the only place that offers that. No, I was in Galveston, the old town. I didn't know this. Galveston is Swedish for tourist trap. It was so cool walking around and realizing that in the 1400s, there were people living in a Burger King. Wow. That's so interesting. As was mentioned, you guys are proud heritage of being Vikings. Yeah? Vikings, right? There you go. Those guys were horrible people. Yeah. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. Like, it's like they raped and pillaged. You never hear like, oh, but the Viking artwork. I mean, what about some of those Viking songs? No, they did a lot of rape and pillage. That's kind of over. Isn't it weird that at one time that was part of the plan? Like, all human beings are like, all right, well, so we'll go in, we'll surprise them, we'll pacify the people, and then, the old rape and pillage. You know that one person was like, can I just do the pillage part? I'm engaged. Are you saying you don't want to rape and pillage? I'm not. My fiance, I don't want to lie to her. Do you know what I mean? And it's just, I can't believe he thinks that's funny. That's not funny at all. That's not funny at all. Scandinavia, you're very fast. You guys love design. You love design, which is really code for we like wood. I mean, I like wood, but you guys are like, I like wood. Like, can we do it with wood? Let's do it with wood. Sweden, like you guys with the wooden horse, settle down. Wooden horse. That's great. It's a toy. That's great. You can move on now. But it's wood. All of Scandinavia. In Norway, there are buildings obviously constructed with steel and concrete, covered in wood. Fooling no one. But the Norwegians walk around like, maybe it's wood. I don't know. Maybe it's all wood. We like wood. It could be all wood. I don't know. happy place, right? You know, it is very happy. Not as happy as Finland. Finland, 6 years in a row, happiest place on earth. And I don't know if you've been to Finland or met people from Finland, but they exude happiness. Whoa. Like if I'm walking down the street and I hear people laughing, I'm like, they're probably from Finland. They're always happy. I love Finland. I've been lucky enough to go there a couple times. I don't get a sense of happiness. I mean, even the weather's like, can you believe this shit? Can you believe this? It's January for 10 months a year. I do love Finland. I feel like Finland, of course, not part of Scandinavia. Finland is not part of, it's Nordic. There's a big difference. There's a big difference. I'm convinced Norway, Sweden, and Denmark just came up with the term Nordic so they wouldn't have to involve Finland. Yeah! That's because you know Finland was like, hey you guys, we were thinking, you know, maybe Finland should be part of Scandinavia. I mean, we got a common border, you know, our flag also has a cross on it, and like you guys were socially awkward. Maybe we should be part of Scandinavia. And then the Scandinavian countries were like, yeah, it's not that we don't like you or that you're not good looking, but you're already part of a really cool group. Finland's, oh really, a cool group? What's the cool group? And they're like, it's called, what's it called? Nordic countries. Finland's like, oh, who else is a Nordic country? Is it a big group? Well, it's all the Scandinavian countries and you. And Iceland, there's 50 people that live there. So we're not trying to box you out. We're just, if you could just not look at us while we talk. And I can see why Finland would want to be part of Scandinavia. Yeah, you guys feel more evolved. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a greater importance for equality, there's a social safety net, there's the sex with animals. Or is that just Denmark? Is that just Denmark? I mean, I know that, like, it's legal to have, God, I wish I didn't know that. Is it legal? At one point, Denmark was a destination for sex tourism. There were animal brothels. Really wish I didn't know that. And so eventually Denmark was like, all right, we gotta stop this. And so they tried to make it illegal, and the farmers in Denmark went on strike. I've never been so proud to be an American. I was like, oh my God, there's a Florida here too. You know what's amazing? And then they did a compromise. They closed the animal brothels. Can't believe I'm even saying that term. And they made it only legal if the animal is not suffering. I don't know how they determine that. You know, like they ask, you know, if you ask a cow for consent or something, or are they mooing or are they booing? I don't know. I didn't like a lot of his jokes. I felt like he had too many jokes about Scandinavia. Helsinki, I don't know if any of the Scandinavian countries have this. They have a huge Ferris wheel. A lot of major cities have like these huge Ferris wheels. Like London has the London Eye. There's one in Tokyo, Singapore, Sydney. There's a huge, which means like in all these great cities, people had the same thought. They're like, hey, you know how the worst ride at the amusement park is the Ferris wheel? You know how you get on and then you move a little bit and then you're kind of essentially stuck in traffic. But there's also the chance you could fall to your death. What if we built a huge one where it destroyed our skyline? Anti-wheelchair jokes. Ferris wheel, I don't know why I said what's going on with me? He just, things would come out of his mouth. It was scary. It is great to be here. I'm so grateful that I can travel and do what I love, but I do need you to know that my life at home is horrible. I have 5 children, and it's like hell. It's the opposite of this experience. Like, I'm never greeted with applause. I'm not even greeted. My children don't even look up from their phones. And I'm not saying parents should be greeted with applause. I think parents should receive standing ovations. Right? And there should be an announcer. The only reason you're not sleeping on the sidewalk. Give it up. It's parenting. It's hard. It's hard. It's the opposite of this experience. Like, if you saw what my life was like at home, and you didn't know I was a comedian, and then I just pulled you aside and I said, you know, sometimes I go to Europe and I do shows. You'd look at me and be like, you're mentally ill. You're not all there, are you? Because, you know, and I understand not everyone here is a parent. You know, when you have a child, you become a parent, and if you don't have a child, you remain happy. But that's not to say, by the way, people that choose to not have children, they're the weirdest. They're the weirdest. They always create like these artificial obstacles in their lives, right? There are always a couple, and they're like, yeah, and then we joined the Peace Corps, and then my wife and I, we started a bird sanctuary. You're like, you think that's impressive? I dragged a 17-year-old through high school, academically. I cheated every day for him. That's service. That's service. If you don't have children, let me tell you a story that kind of embodies the parenting experience. I have 5 children, so I always try and do one-on-one time with each of them. That way I'm sure I've met them all. About a month ago, I went for a walk with my 10-year-old son, and when we were leaving, I said to him, I was like, hey, it's kind of chilly out there, you might want to grab a coat. And he was like, I'm not wearing a coat, that's stupid, I'm not wearing a coat. And I'm like, it's fine, you don't have to wear a coat. So we went for a walk, and it was a long walk, and when we turned to walk back, he looked at me and he asked, can I have your coat? And I gave him my coat, and was very uncomfortable. Right? Because if you don't have kids, what you don't realize, being a parent is like being a psychic that's constantly correct. But always ignored. Right? There's just no crystal ball, right? The parents are like, ooh, it's chilly out there. You might want to grab a coat. And the kid's like, you're fat. If you stay up super late, you might be tired in the morning. You're bald. I see economic hardship when I kick you out of this house. Parents, you know, children don't understand consequences. Parents understand consequences. They're called children. That's why occasionally every parent looks at their kids and goes, I shouldn't have gotten wasted that night. I do love my children. I do love them. But they've ruined my life. They've ruined it. And you know, people that don't have kids, you know, they're like, I would never let my child treat me horribly. I'm like, Yeah, you would. People would be like, well, I wouldn't let my kid speak to me rudely. You certainly would. Then how come my mom wouldn't let me do it? Because she would beat us. And we can't do that anymore. It's chaos. It's chaos. They treat me well. Like if I described how my children treat me to a therapist, any therapist, but I didn't say it was my children, I was like, I live with these 5 people. They eat all my food, they spend all my money. When I ask them to do anything, they yell at me. Any therapist would be like, you should move out. You're the victim of abuse. Not all kids treat their parents horribly, but most teenagers do. Most teenagers. It's so sad when they become a teenager. Because you have this sweet, kind 12-year-old, and then boom, they're Satan. All that wonder and sweetness just transforms into body odor and poor judgment. It's so sad. And then the parents, you have to learn how to communicate with them. My wife emails me articles, how to talk to your teenage daughter. I'm like, delete. Don't you want to learn how to communicate? Not really. I'll stick with English. They do hear things differently. Like if I tell my 13-year-old daughter, hurry up, we're running late, she hears, I'm gonna kill you. But then of course we talk it through and we come to an agreement that I'm a horrible person. And then I go drink alcohol. Do you think it's interesting how in all commercials and billboards for alcohol, people are always happy and having a good time? I would just like to see one print ad that said whiskey, because you're trapped, and that suicide's not on the table. Shit, that's horrible. The greatest irony of teenagers, though, is that they're embarrassed of their parents. I'm like, well, you're embarrassed of me? Have you looked in the mirror? My kids will come to me like, can you act like you don't know me? I don't want my friends who have met you many times to think I have parents. Okay. It's hard. I freely admit it. My wife has it so much harder. She has it so much harder, but this whole thing's kind of her fault. I mean, they came out of her body. They didn't come out of me. I mean, in a way, they're not even my kids. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but that whole, like, sperm fertilizing the egg thing, I've never seen that in person. I've seen a simulation of it. You know how, like, you might, like, stage a landing on the moon. Men should be suspicious. You know, women discover they're going to become a parent. Men are told. And men are told the same way they find out they have cancer. You should sit down. Men have a similar response. How much time do I have? My wife doesn't like any of these jokes. But that's all right. My beard's growing back. I had to shave my beard recently because I wanted everyone to know how ugly I am. Like when I have to shave my beard for weeks after that, I feel like I should walk around apologizing. Sorry, you're eating, sorry about that. Because men who have a beard do not have a beard because they want to have a beard. It's a public service. Every guy who has a beard at one point looked in the mirror barefaced and said, "Oh God, I gotta grow a beard." They need the beard. Jesus had a beard. Jesus, our Lord and Savior, at one point saw his reflection and was like, "I'm not gonna get any followers looking like this." It's a nice theater. Very nice theater. I don't like too fancy though, right? Like this is nice, like the too fancy, like the restaurants where they have the hostess that pretends that's like a supermodel that pretends they're your friend. And I was like, "Hi, how are you? How's it going tonight?" And you're like, "You didn't even talk to me." Let me show you to your table. Let me know if you have any questions. Yeah, why are you acting like we vacation together? It's almost cruel. The fanciest restaurant I ever went to was after a movie premiere. That's not really important, but I wanted you to know I was in a movie. It was after this, thank you. It was after this movie premiere. Everyone from the movie, everyone from the cast, we went in and we followed this supermodel hostess. She led us to these 6 tables and we sat down, and when our entrees were delivered, these 6 dancers came out in these very elegant ballet outfits and they started dancing in front of each of the 6 tables. I realize it sounds like I'm describing a strip club. The restaurant was called Lapland. No, it was an actual restaurant that for some reason, when they delivered the entree, there was a dancer at the end of the table dancing. It was very, it was awkward. I didn't want to ignore the dancer, but I didn't want to be like chewing on steak, being like, "Yeah, pretty one there, huh? Some good legs on that one." It was awkward for so many reasons, but mainly because I could tell our dancer was really into me. She was acting like she wasn't, but I wasn't bored yesterday. It was awkward. So at the end of the meal, everyone from the movie, we went to the bar, which was part of the restaurant, and we started having some drinks, and some other people came down and sat at the 6 tables, and they eventually got their entrees, and the dancers came out, and I could see our dancer was dancing for another table, and I was like, "Oh, I see what's going on. She's trying to make me jealous." Well, I don't play those games. I was the more mature one, I just ignored it. And at the end of the night, everyone from the movie, we were outside the restaurant, we were talking. Some people were going out, and I was like, "I'm just gonna go to my hotel." So I turn and I start walking to my hotel, and I recognize someone in the distance talking on the phone. And I realized it was our dancer from the restaurant. And I was like, "What a coincidence. What a coincidence. What are the odds?" And she was doing that pretend talk on the phone thing. "Oh, I'm just talking on the phone." I'm like, "Okay, all right." So I did what any happily married man would do. I followed her home and killed her. But you can see how it wasn't my fault. Now, the only reason that's funny is because it's true. No, the only reason it's that funny is because men are that dumb. Men are that dumb. Every man in this room has misread signals and thought, "Oh, that woman's into me." Only to realize later on, "Oh, she's not into me." And then that woman mysteriously disappears. This is the part of the show where the women are like, "Why are we here?" Let me just say up front, I am like against murder. I don't want to divide the room, but I I would describe myself as anti-murder. Like if after the show, if me and some friends go out and the friends are like, come on, let's go kill someone. I'll be like, no, that's wrong. And they might pick on me. They might be like, oh, you're a liberal, you're a snowflake. But I'll just deal with it. I recognize that's kind of it's a violent story, but I'm trying to illustrate a point, and there's violence in the Bible. I mean, in a way, I kind of told a Bible story. The parable of the dancer in the creek. There is violence in the Bible, though, right? Like early on, God asked Abraham to sacrifice his only son, And it's not like God was talking baseball. God was like, Abraham, I want your son to hit a pop fly so we can advance a runner from first to second. That joke's funnier when you know baseball. Or maybe not. No, God asked Abraham to kill his only son. And Abraham, like most fathers, was like, all right, I'll do it. But we don't know what Abraham was doing right before God asked him. Maybe Abraham was going through bills and he's like, who spent 500 shekels on their window? And then right at that moment, God's like, Abraham, I want you to sacrifice your only son. And Abraham's like, gladly. Can it be a strangle sacrifice? Of course, God was testing Abraham. He was trying to see how loyal he was, but that's a pretty extreme request. You'd think he would have started with something small, that God would have been like, Abraham, I want you to kill your goldfish. Abraham's like, all right, I'll do it. And God's like, I'm just kidding. I'd never ask you to kill your pet. Now that son of yours. It's a weird thing. God was up in heaven, and Abraham was walking around on earth, and God was like was there any miscommunication? Was God like, Abraham? No, not you, the other Abraham. Yeah, the really old guy. Yeah, Abraham, I want. And was there anyone, like, did anyone in heaven hear this stuff? Was like Jesus up there, and like God's like, Abraham, I want you to sacrifice your only son. Jesus is like, Dad, what are you doing? God's like, mind your own business. Pay no attention to that bearded hippie. Abraham, I want you to sacrifice your only son. Jesus is like, Dad, you can't ask Abraham to sacrifice his only son. And then God's like, man, that gives me an idea. Jesus, I want you to go down to earth and tell the humans I'm your dad. Jesus is like, well, if I tell the humans you're my dad, they might get angry. They might hurt me. God's like, no. They would never do that. They seem so nice down there. All right, I'll go down there, but if they start to hurt me, you'll stop them, right? And God's like, yeah, definitely, probably. Don't worry about it. Abraham, of course, lived to the age of 175. He died when he was 175. You think when they were compiling books for the Bible, anyone was like, do we really want to say 175? I mean, we want people to read this, right? Why don't we just put 75? You know what I mean? He had the Mediterranean diet, that would be... 175? Like, if you met someone today and they're like, yeah, my grandpa lived to 130, you'd be like, well, that's obviously a lie. 175? Can you imagine if you lived to 175? Like, yeah, I retired at 60. I had no idea. Now 15 years. I mean, how much golf can one man play? And I took the early retirement. If I had retired when I was 150, you see, it's weird. 175. I think it's supposed to be presented as like a positive thing. Like, he got to live to 175. But, like, the quality of life of the last 95 years, not great. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that I'm a Christian. And I say that mainly to make you feel uncomfortable. Because when non-Christians hear me say I'm a Christian, they think, oh no. And when Christians hear me say I'm a Christian, they think, oh no. So it's a way to bring the crowd together. And it works. You guys are a nice crowd. Thank you. I feel kind of guilty having COVID right now. I do not have COVID. Actually, I was just tested. I took one of those online tests. Said I'm an empath. Monkeypox. Monkeypox, that kind of sounds like a kid's cereal. It's like, what's the prize inside? Sex with men. What a weird couple of years we've had. Right? I mean, I'm sure you're all vaccinated or gonna die. People made their own decisions. We had no control over it. My parents aren't vaccinated. I mean, they've been dead for a couple decades. Enough with the excuses, right? I'll tell you, the pandemic did reveal how important your occupation is to society. And let's just say, stand-up comedian, not essential. Not even essential. It didn't surprise me. There isn't a time in history when I think I would have been of any use. Like even when they were creating the first communities, like we need someone to gather water, someone to build housing. Jim, how can you help? I can make fun of those people. I could do that. It did make me contemplate my mortality. I just know when I go, I want it over quick. Like if I'm in a plane crash, I want the plane to explode midair. I was reading about this one plane crash. This plane was flying at 30,000 feet, 35,000 feet, I don't know how to talk. 30,000 feet. And then it started to nosedive. It nosedived for 3 minutes. 3 minutes! Brutal! That's a long time! And you know, for the first minute, everyone on that plane was like, ah! But eventually, probably after like 60 seconds, they're like, ah! Is there any water? I didn't really pace out my dying scream. 3 minutes, that's a long time! You know someone on that plane rang the flight attendant button. Ding! Do you know how long till we crash? Does this mean we can get a free drink? 3 minutes, that's long enough for passengers to get on each other's nerves. You know, when you scream, can you not grab my armrest? Look, I'll kill you before we even crash. Maybe the pilot came over the intercom. Hey everyone, it's your captain here. Just wanted to thank you for choosing to fly with us. Special shout out to our silver medallion members. You would have earned 2,000 miles on today's flight, but it looks like we're not going to quite reach 700. Our flight attendant Betty has been with the airline for 31 years. And it appears today's her last day. You can go ahead and take your phone off of airplane mode. Heck, I'm taking the plane off of airplane mode. At this point, we're just a metal box hurling towards the air. We should have you back on the ground in about 7 seconds. Is that too dark? It's gonna get worse. Because that was the lesson of the pandemic, right? That it's inevitable. Eventually, we're all gonna go. Don't worry, not all my materials is uplifting. But we're all gonna go, and then our loved ones will do our funeral. That's harsh, right? The people closest to the deceased are put in charge. It's like, we know you're in a very vulnerable state, but time to host a party. They're in shock. Everyone at a funeral is in shock. If you're not a little surprised at a funeral, you're the murderer. It was so unexpected. Not for me. Funerals are weird. Open casket, closed casket. You've been to an open casket. His memory will live on in my nightmares. At Catholic funerals, you're supposed to kneel next to the casket and say a prayer. That prayer goes like this. One Mississippi. Two Mississippi. It's gotta be long enough. Because the body looks weird in the casket. They're always overdressed. We put men in business suits. What do they have, an interview? Dress for the afterlife you want. People usually say, he looks like he's resting. Or he passed out at an office Christmas party. Why is he wearing a tie? If you want me to rest in peace, bury me in pajamas. In preparation for the funeral, they put makeup on the dead person. When did Grandpa start wearing eyeliner? There's special funeral makeup. You never see commercials for that makeup. Maybe that corpse is still alive. Or maybe it's Maybelline. Don't want to drop that gorgeous. That's someone's job to put makeup on someone. That couldn't have been the goal. Somehow the dream of, I want to work in fashion became, I'll put blush on the corpse. It is an art form. I mean, it's impressive, some of that funeral makeup. I'm surprised there's not a reality show. Pimp My Corpse. I have my own idea for a reality show. I think it's a winner. The show would open with two identical bodies lying next to each other. One of the bodies would be dead, the other cake. The show's called Dinner Cake, right? Then a loved one would be given a cake knife. Susie loved her grandma. How long did she know her? Will she cut the delicious red velvet cake or her nana? Let's find out. Susie, you make it. Oh, Susie. There's a point where people are like, I thought he was going to do food jokes. Food jokes. Funerals are weird. Open casket, closed casket. I want to be sitting up in my casket. Just sitting there, eyes open. I want to be positioned near the doorway so when people enter the room, they're like, what the hell? I definitely want there to be crumbs on my chest. Did he recently? I pre-record an announcement. Thanks for coming to my funeral. Don't be sad, I'm at a better place. Just kidding, I'm right here. Man, I don't know if this is in poor taste, but at that moment, I'd like my body to burst into flames. I want to be cremated, but at my own funeral. You know, something for everyone, a little surf and turf. You went too far. We've all lost someone. You ever lose someone and you still have their number in your phone, but you just can't bring yourself to delete it? But they're never gonna call. It'd be weird if they did. Grandma, stop looking at that filth on the internet. We lost my aunt several years ago, and eventually someone else was assigned her phone number. And we know that because my aunt was part of our family text chain. And at one point, this random guy just chimed in, kind of annoyed. He was like, why am I part of this text chain? So I responded the only way I could. I was like, because you're my aunt and we love you. was like, throw him, not your aunt. And I was like, you haven't changed a bit. What a character, right? Different cultures have their own kind of rituals to deal with loss. I think the Mexicans do it best. They have Dia de Muertos, which means Day of the Dead. I bet you didn't know I was bilingual. The Day of the Dead is a celebration of the life of the person they lost. And they got this from the Aztecs. Supposedly the Aztecs would go all in. Once a year the Aztecs would visit the grave of a loved one, dig up the body, clean the bones, and then eat a meal with the skeleton. I just feel like my mom wouldn't want that. Or the local authorities. What the hell are you doing? Well, I was having dinner with my mom until you rudely interrupted. Don't worry, I can say that because I'm Aztec. The most famous Aztec, of course, is Montezuma. You may have heard of Montezuma's revenge. If you're in Mexico and you get diarrhea, that's Montezuma's revenge. Montezuma had the ability to give other people diarrhea. That was like his superpower. You get diarrhea, you get diarrhea. He was like the Oprah of diarrhea. I don't know if he's part of the Marvel Universe. Montezuma reporting for duty. And duty. It's weird. I had always heard that the best revenge is a life well lived, but I don't know, giving your enemy diarrhea's gotta be up there. We all know someone we'd like to give diarrhea to. So, oh, Carol wants me to work this weekend? Well, looks like she's not doing anything either. Thanks, Montezuma. It's a unique form of revenge. You never see that in one of those Liam Neeson movies. I have a very particular set of skills. And if anything should happen to my daughter, you will find yourself with IBS. That stands for irritable bowel syndrome. It's a fancy term for diarrhea. No, I understand that's a lot of diarrhea jokes. But I feel like I can say that because I have diarrhea. I do. I always have diarrhea. I don't want to brag. I have ADHD, always does have diarrhea. For me, every day is D&D diarrhea. And I'm sure some of you are like, oh, he's just saying that to impress the ladies. And there might be a guy out there, I'm gonna go with the diarrhea comic. Well, too bad, because I'm taken. Diarrhea comes from the Greek word dia, meaning God, and rhea, meaning I have diarrhea. Now, I'm faced with the challenge of segueing back to normal material after what can only be described as an explosion of diarrhea jokes. Bell towers are weird. It worked, it totally worked. Oh, thank you so much. You know, Minnesota is very Scandinavian. He goes, yeah, we know. And I did a show, occasionally I'll perform in the city. I did a show in Rochester, Minnesota. I'd never been there before. So I asked my cab driver, I was like, is there anything I should know about Rochester? And he said, oh yeah, we got a really cool bell tower. And I thought, oh cool, so there's nothing. But I tried to be polite. I was like, oh, a bell tower? And he's like, yeah, it's one of the only bell towers in the area. And I was like, I wonder why. But of course there was a time when a bell tower was interesting. And not only that, there was a time when a bell was cutting-edge technology. Like from a historical standpoint, not that long ago, if a person was walking to a town, someone might be like, you're going to this town? Well, get ready, because this town, believe it or not, has a bell. And at that time, the person might have been like, a bell, what's that? And then the person would have to explain. They'd be like, well, it's kind of hard to describe. It's this metal thing kind of shaped like a bell. It rings. There was a time when bells were new, which means there were people that were probably resistant, suspicious, I don't know, trust that bell. When they ring it, I cover my ears. I don't want the government harvesting my DNA. No, thank you. Probably people worried about the effects the bell would have on children. You know, kids are already distracted. Now they're ringing that damn bell every hour. Soon kids won't even be able to read a sundial. I like how some of your face like, now he's doing bell jokes. I didn't know it would get this edgy. The amazing thing is, you know there's one person in here that's like, I'm offended. I came to hear comedy, not some anti-bell tirade. My family's been making bells for generations. Our business barely survives the pandemic, and then this fat ass starts bad-mouthing bells during peak bell season. But does he care? No, he doesn't care. He's just some balding idiot in his early 20s. Trying to distract us from the fact he's offbeat good looking. I'm sure that's not what all of you think. There's so many types of bells. Oh, you thought that was the end of the bell joke? I decide for whom the bell tolls. You never thought you'd miss a diarrhea joke, did you? I do hope everyone feels well. I did a show recently, and this guy in the front row became ill. They had to stop the show. They turned on the lights, paramedics came in. He was fine, but you should know my comedy can cause illness. They brought the guy to the hospital. I don't know what he told the doctor. He's like, yeah, I was watching Jim Gaffigan do stand-up, and I just started feeling nauseous. The doctor's like, that's not unusual. By chance, was he doing jokes about bells? He had a couple, so too many bell jokes. Anything else? At one point I saw this bright white light, but I think that was just Jim. I'm gonna prescribe you some Taco Bell. I suggest you eat it on the toilet. The guy in the front row was fine. It would be weird if I was like, yeah, he died. No, he was fine, but at the same show, half hour later, someone in the audience went into labor during the show. I assume it was a woman. And the mother was fine, the baby was fine, so even if the guy in the front row had died, it would have been essentially a wash. I mean, that's comedy, right? Here's something cute, because the baby was delivered at my show, they decided to call him Fat Ass. Which is not even true, but it still hurts my feelings. But what are the odds? What are the odds? 2 medical emergencies at the same show, right? And I think the weirdest coincidence, I made both stories up. Oh, he thought that was funny, tricking us? We don't appreciate that. We don't appreciate that at all. Not here, it doesn't float here. We don't like that. No. It's nice out there. Nice weather, right? That's the weather. I don't know. That's the weather it's supposed to be, right? Remember when weather wasn't frightening? Because now if it's unseasonably cold or unseasonably warm, we all give each other a look like, this means we're all gonna die. There's probably a flood coming. Admit it, when you used to leave your house, you think, do I need a coat? And now you're like, should I buy a boat? I don't know much about global warming, but I do know they stopped debating it. Like 5 years ago, there was always a guy on TV in the US like, there's no proof the Earth is warming. And now that same guy's like, well, what are you gonna do? Something's happening. In 20 years, what are we going to tell our children and grandchildren? Because they're going to come up to us. They're going to be like, did you know about global warming? We're going to be like, yeah, I heard about it. More of a rumor back then. And like, did you protest like that Greta lady? Well, kind of. I mean, there was a pandemic. We didn't really do groups. There's floods, there's fires, there's a pandemic. In biblical times, these would have been messages from God. Like, we don't know, God might be out there right now like, are they getting any of these messages? Is anything getting through? God's assistant's like, no, sir. Set the entire state of California on fire. Did they get the message? One woman is saying it's space lasers, sir. What about the pandemic? I said the plague. They're blaming the guy who came up with Microsoft Word. I miss the days when you could send a plague and people would listen. Because that's how God used to communicate he was unhappy. He'd send a plague. That was like his sad face emoji. God would send a plague and then humans would interpret it. They'd be like, well, he either wants you to let the Hebrews go or he really wants us to eat these frogs. That's a lot of frogs. I love how that was one of the plagues, frogs. God got his assistant together and he's like, write down all these plagues. And his assistant's like, yes, sir, yes, sir. And it's like, we're going to freak that Pharaoh out. First, we're going to turn all the water into blood, water into blood. And his assistant's like, water into blood, got it, sir. And now we're going to take it up a notch. Frog. His assistant's like, oh, what about frogs, sir? That's the second plague. You know, everyone's frightened of frogs. They are, sir? Oh, yeah, I created frogs and I'm terrified. I mean, what are frogs? Are they fish? Are they lizards? They're amphibians, sir. They're amphibians, sir. Just write down my damn plagues. I like how there were 10 plagues, like there were albums God released. Like a catalog. Was there ever a retrospective where God was interviewed and he's like, yeah, my 10 plagues. They really were a reflection of where I was. I know I wanted to start with water into blood. I was going to do water into wine, but I thought I'd save that for my son. And then the fish, I mean the frogs. The frogs, I was in a crazy place. I had just watched a bunch of Muppet movies. God's communication always changing, right? You know, we talked to, he sent the plagues, he talked to Moses as the burning bush, then he sent angels. God was like, Gabriel, get in here! Gabriel was like, yes, sir, I have my horn, do you want to hear a song? God's like, hell no. Gabriel, I need you to go down to earth and find Mary. And Gabriel was like, do you have the last name, sir? It's not Magdalene, it's the other one. You'll recognize her, she has a halo and she stands like this. Okay, sir. Gabriel, go down to earth, find Mary, and tell her she's gonna have my child. Gabriel's like, excuse me, sir? Tell Mary she's gonna be my baby's mama. Sir, you want me to tell her? Well, I can't do it. She's only 14, it'll be inappropriate. Anything else, sir? Yeah, when you're down there, get me some hummus. And look out for frogs. They're everywhere. I'm Catholic. Catholics believe God has sent Mary down to earth numerous times. These are called Marian visitations. Mary usually comes down to earth and talks to the least helpful person she can find. Mary will be like, "You French peasant girl, build me a church." And the girl's like, "I'm 12. But my favorite Marian visitation is when Mary visited Mexico. She visited Juan Diego. Juan Diego was an Aztec convert who used to walk 10 miles every day to church, 10 miles every day to church. And one day he was about to walk to church and Mary appeared to him and she said, "Juan Diego, tell the bishop to build a church here." And Juan Diego's like, "I've been Catholic for like a week." Mary's like, "Just do it." So Juan Diego walked all the way into town, and he found the bishop and he's like, "Bishop, Jesus' mom told me to tell you to build a church closer to where I live." And the bishop's like, "Do you have proof?" And Juan Diego's like, "She made it sound like you guys knew each other." And the next day, Juan Diego's uncle, who he lived with, became ill, and his uncle sent him into town for help. And as Juan Diego was leaving, he remembered Mary, and he's like, "I don't want to run into her." So he went a different way, thinking he could trick God's mom. And Mary was like, "What the hell are you doing?" He's like, "Ah! My uncle's sick, I need to get him help, and the bishop said he needs proof." And Mary said, "I'll deal with your uncle for proof. Go into the mountains and pick these flowers and bring them to the bishop for proof." And Juan Diego's like, "I don't think you know what proof is." But he walked all the way into the mountains, and he picked all these flowers, and he put them in his cape, and he walked all the way into town, and he found the bishop. And he said, "Bishop, Jesus' mom told me to tell you to build a church closer to where I live." And the bishop was like, "Do you have proof?" And Juan Diego's like, "I hope you like flowers." And he dropped his cape, and all these roses that were not in season fell to the ground. And on his cape was an image of Kanye West. No, it's the Virgin Mary who sent us. But as a result, the bishop built the church closer to where Juan Diego lived. All of Mexico became Catholic, and Juan Diego's uncle invented the burrito. And if you don't believe that, you're going to hell. All right, you guys have been a delight. Thank you so much for coming.